let's say you want to run a fast 400, right? Whether you're a middle distance runner stepping down or short sprinter stepping up, there are a lot of principles that remain, right? I want to break down. Okay, let's break into 4 phases. And Coach Jason from Top Line Running, hope you're doing well. This is something that I talk about a lot on here and on my TikTok account. But I want to break this down for you and we can show you some slides. And again, if you're a runner or a coach and you're not subscribed to this channel, please make sure you do that right now before you leave. Okay, about 2/3 of the people who watch the videos on this channel are not subscribed. So I'd like to get to um, over 10,000 subscribers this year if I can. So, and I would greatly appreciate it. And again, blackbeltrunningcoach@gmail.com is my email. So if you need to reach out to me for any questions about any one of the videos on this channel, we've got 500 plus here. Do not hesitate to reach out to me. Again, it's blackbeltrunningcoach@gmail.com. Okay. Now let's just get right into the details here. Okay. Again, 400 meters. Okay. Phase one is essentially the first 100 meters, and it's always a good warm up, drills and strides, and so on and so forth. Okay. That goes without saying. But phase one, I consider the start. Okay, so ideally, and a lot of it is self-explanatory, but I want to add some details. So you want to get out hard and fast, but controlled. Okay, and there's a difference. Okay, you can get hard and fast. If you're controlled, then you're setting yourself up for the next phase. Okay, so you want to get to about 80 to 85% of your top speed in the first 30 to 35 meters. And at that point, you want to remain there if you possibly can. That sets you up to come off the turn into the straight run. Keep in mind, okay, there are differences between the indoor track and the outdoor track. Outdoor track, what we're talking about here, you're staying in your lane. So tactics aren't the same as they are in the indoor track, where you can cut in and then you have to pass people. Okay, you stay in your lane for the outdoor meet every step of the way. Okay, so these principles kind of apply a little bit easier there. So again, get to 80 to 85% of your top speed in the first 35 to 35 meters. That sets you up to come off that turn and into the straightaway, which is phase two, with some momentum. Okay. And that's what you want, momentum going down the straightaway, these long straightaways, which takes you obviously into phase two. And again, if you can maintain that speed and rhythm, if that second 100 meters going into the 200, you're going to be going in there without much wasted effort and energy. And that's what you want. You do not want to have a lot of wasted effort and energy, because at this point, this is when lactic acid will start to creep up. Fatigue can start to creep up at about 200 meters. And a couple things I want to point out here. Okay. Not making moves, not covering moves. There will be people who go out way too fast. And let's just use 50 as an example. People want to break 50. Okay. It makes a lot more sense to not go out in 22 point to break 50 and come back in 27. Okay. That could be the difference between running 49.1 and 49.6. That could be the difference between being first in a race and sixth in a race. So running this evenly sets you up to not slow down as much in the last 200 meters. Okay, when you can tighten that gap as much as possible. 23.25 point is a heck of a lot better to run a 49 than a 22 point and a 27. So just something to keep in mind, okay? So you maintaining the rhythm is what helps you keep that second half of the race close to the first half. And that's what I mean by 23.25 versus 22.27. I've seen way too often people go out way too fast and come back and fall apart in the last 100 meters. That does not need to happen. Yes, the 100 meters is a very intense race. It's one of the most unforgiving races. And you need to have a sufficient amount of aerobic conditioning to succeed in what's considered a strictly anaerobic race. Okay, kind of sounds counterintuitive, but it's something that's very, very, very critical for success in a 400. Now, after that, you hit the 200-meter mark, you go into phase three, which is basically the next 80 to 100 meters. Okay, coming around the turn again. And again, by not going out too fast, okay, or trying to make moves or cover moves in that second straightaway, in that first straightaway, I should say, is what can delay the accumulation of fatigue and lactic acid. Okay, this is the area, the purgatory, whatever you want to call it, the chamber. Now, this is when you will start to feel some lactic in the legs and some fatigue. So going out intelligently, that first 200, you can be aggressive but intelligent. The more intelligent you are and the more strategic you are going out the first 200, the better off you're going to be in the second 200. Okay. And like I said, if you do that and you maintain your stride pattern and your rhythm going around that second turn, Going into the final straightaway, it sets you up well for the final 100 to 120 meters of the race, which is phase 4. Okay, so you're maintaining your rhythm as much as you possibly can here. Okay, at no point should it feel like you're overextending in the last 400 meters or changing your stride pattern in the last 100 meters. That's the last thing you want. That's going to make lactic acid accumulate even quicker in the legs, make it even more uncomfortable and more painful, and make it easier to fall apart while other people can pass you. And again, I'm I'm breaking these phases down to put you in a position to pass people instead of people being passed by you or being passing you. Okay, so this is where phase 4, the last straightaway. This is where the aerobic and the anaerobic systems are firing together on all cylinders, all of them. Okay, this is when you're going to need to maximize both here. Okay, and going back to what I mentioned before, maintaining consistent rhythm and stride patterns will make it easier to fight the fatigue and the lactic acid to help with a strong finish. This is where people fall apart, and the people who don't fall apart are the people who go out intelligently in the first 200 meters. Okay, it boils back to the first half of the race. So breaking it up into phases and kind of thinking about how you want to execute each phase is absolutely important. It's critical to your success in the 400. And if you're a coach or an athlete, I highly encourage you to talk about this. And I'll even go live on this channel so we can break it down for people who train for the 400. Okay, in a way that's applicable to you. Okay, but now the last thing I want to show you is components of training that's going to put you in a position to do this type of stuff, right? So, important parts of training. So, pure speed, obviously, even short stuff, 20s, 30s, 40s, even from a down start, pure acceleration, even with resistance bands, or just straight up like you're going to attack a 60-meter dash, right? That type of pure speed. Then you have your aerobic development. Let's just say a Saturday you're not racing. This is when you can go to a field, a cross-country course, and run a couple of miles, 2 to 3 miles max, over rolling areas. Build that strength and over the hills. Build your leg strength, right? And you can even add some accelerations, turn it into a fartlek, speed play, right? 30 seconds hard here, a minute hard there, and so on and so forth. Kind of change up the variety in your training. But that aerobic development is critical, particularly in a season where you're not racing. This is a great thing to do in the summer. This is a great thing to do in the fall during cross country when you're not racing. Okay. It sets you up to have a long, successful indoor season and transition into a successful outdoor season when you're going to be racing a heck of a lot more frequently. But it's this type of stuff that'll make it easier for you to recover from the races and come back the next time, okay, and run well. It'll also make it easier for you to double. A lot of people run a 400 come back in a 4x4, right? Or 400 come back in a 4x2, or 600 come back in a 4x4, whatever. This is the type of stuff that's going to help you do that. Okay, so hill running, even if you're doing hundreds uphill and walk down recovery, 150s uphill, walk down recovery, 200s uphill, walk down recovery. That could be a day of a week of training. And essentially, the way I break it down, okay, pure speed on Monday, and then your 800-meter session, okay, which is what I'm going to talk about next. I encourage your athletes to train like an 800-meter runner once per week. This is the aerobic development, the speed development, speed endurance that I talk to a lot of people about on here and on TikTok. Access to Coach is my TikTok, by the way. So if you're not following me there, please make sure you do that. I do a lot of training content on there as well. But here's your once a week 800-meter session. And as an example, you're building towards 8 times the 200 meters with a 2-minute recovery after each rep. So let's just say you're looking to run 50. You're going to run these. So you're going to try to get to them in 29 or 30 per rep. Okay, 29 to 30 seconds per rep. If you're looking to run 52, you run them in 31, 32, and so on. Looking around 48, you run them in 27, 28. About 9 to 10 seconds slower. Okay, so that's the workout. And you're building towards 8 times 200. And if you do that, that's about a mile's worth of volume at 800-meter pace. That's a good speed endurance workout. And this is the type of stuff that'll make it easier for you to double, make it easier to run that second half of the 400 as well as your first half and stronger than most of your opponents. Okay, so those are important components of training. But again, like I said, break it on. Pure speed Monday, speed endurance 200s on Tuesday. You could do hill running or event specific stuff like a 2 to 300 meter reps, and you want to try to come through 200 or 250 or 300 at your goal 400-meter pace. Take plenty of recovery. Then you can do hills on Thursday, and you can even do baton passing and stuff like that, more down starts and things on Friday, and then you can do your cross country simulation on Saturday, right? And then take off Sunday. That's a good way to balance out your training in a way that enables you to attack every facet of the training that you need to attack. And then you can become a little bit more event specific as you get more into the season. As you start to get closer to the big races, that's when you can start making it a little bit more event specific. And those 8x200, you can cut it down to 7, you can cut it down to 6, right? And make them a second faster, and so on. So those are the phases. And again, I'm speaking from experience as a former competitive runner and a coach of the last 2+ decades. I was also a distance runner who also broke 50 seconds for the 400. So I was sub 50 for the 400 as a distance runner. So I'm familiar with the 400. I was by no means a 400-meter runner. I was the 4th fastest on my 4x4 in college every time. So, and I'm fine with that. But having worked with some 400-meter runners and kind of understanding the differences between the short sprinter and the long sprinter / middle distance runner, there are certain components that are different. There are certain components that remain and consistent. And these are the things that help you provide a balance between short sprinters and middle distance runners that make it applicable and help you help you run a better 400 meters. So if you have any questions about this, don't hesitate to ask. Okay, you can send me an email. You can put questions in the comments here. I will go live, and then I could have live dialogue with people. So get your questions ready. Okay, I'd be more than happy to answer them on the fly. And sometimes one question turns into 2 or 3 or 4. Even better. Helps me learn from you as well if you're a coach or an athlete. So have a great season, everybody. Talk to you next time.